Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. I have no idea what you are able to see on your screen right now. That's simply because this is just a test to see what the actual live streaming capabilities are with my current setup and configuration. I'm doing this because I want to do live commentary at some point of a Formula One practice session and later race sessions, but I need to test things first. So yeah, if anybody's clicking on this, whether it's now or later on, that's what you're seeing, and that's why I'm here, and that's why you're hearing a whole bunch of absolutely mindless ramble, because I have no script, absolutely no nothing, and I'm just trying to see how this is working, if this is working in terms of audio, in terms of what you see. I have no idea. Again, it's just a test, no real content in this. If anybody is happening to watch this right now, leave a comment or go into the chat, something like that, and tell me what you're seeing. Alright, I've seen a couple of comments here. Black screen, yo. From Jan Malone, okay. Good to see. Sage of Light, looking good so far. Smiley face, I like it. Alright. Alright, so that's somewhat encouraging to see. You are hearing me at very least. How is the audio, if anybody is still listening to this? Can you understand me okay? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? Is it popping? Is it breaking up? Anything like that, if I get any sort of feedback. And I see somebody is seeing the F2002 sticker. Okay. I'm guessing that's the cover picture I've got on the profile. Takes a few minutes for the notification to pop up for the live stream. Okay. Alright, sounds very, very clear at the moment. Very good to hear that. Very, very good. Again, I'm just doing this because I want to bring you guys some live commentary of Formula One practice sessions and later on race sessions, depending on how well this goes. Logistically, I'm a little limited in terms of Australia, simply because it's going to be in the middle of the night here in the eastern United States, and I'll be the only one awake in the house, and I don't want to talk too loudly because I'll wake everybody up. But for later races that are occurring at more normal hours for us, I definitely do want to be doing some sort of live commentary of the race. But practice sessions in Australia, they're going to happen around 9:30 at night for me, so that's a reasonable enough time. Somebody saying it's offline? No idea. Ferrari F2002 sticker here too. Good. Sage of Light, same boat in the Netherlands. I definitely feel your pain. Chris Griffiths 93. It's going very well. How are you? Pure Armageddon, hello. Actually, very, very cool to see everybody commenting on this, even though it's just a random test. Huh. This might go a little bit better than I expected, which would be interesting. Let's see, if anybody's ever done a live stream before, please give me some advice in terms of how you actually do this, because I don't know how it's going to work. Streamed live 6 minutes ago. Aero, I tried this for a couple of seconds before. I was getting my encoder set up, and I think it accidentally went live, and then I stopped it, and then I started again, so there may actually be two different videos up right now. No audio issues so far, that's good. Black screen on stream, go to gaming.youtube and it works fine. Alright, interesting. Interesting, interesting. Chris, thanks for the compliments. All clear now from Aero. Good. Good, good. That's what I want to hear. Alright, what else have we got here? Stream options, monetization, cards. I don't think I'm going to get that fancy with it, at least not yet. Also, I don't know if there's any way for me to overlay a video on this, because I've got a couple of different things to worry about. Number one, resources on my computer, because a lot of processing power can be going into this. And temperatures are a little high at the moment, so I don't know if I could run a video in the background and talk over it. I'd have to run that locally from my machine. I don't think I could stream that through YouTube two at once, so that's probably out, but I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, Sage of Light, yes. I am running an NVIDIA card, GTX 950, I think it is. So it's not the best. It actually is an upgrade from what my machine came with, but interesting. Audio is gone now. Alright, can you hear me now? Something might have happened there with that audio. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't touched anything. I'm still showing a stream status on my screen, and everything is unmuted on the YouTube side, so I don't know what's going on with the audio. MP4-6 seems great. Williams FW14 has a little bit too much understeer. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Alright, Pure Armageddon, I'm getting the audios up. Arrow, audio is still up. Sage of Light, try your own settings there, because you seem to be the only one who has an audio problem. I'm going to type him a comment just so he sees it if he still can't hear me. There we go. Yeah, I have to agree with you, Arrow, there. The MP4-6 definitely, it's, first of all, point 2 is a whole bunch, it's a bunch better than point 1 beta was, because I thought the sounds, first of all, were not that great on point 1, and the physics were just, they weren't bad, but they weren't polished. The point 2 beta is certainly a whole lot more refined in every regard. ASR, basically, when they are releasing new betas now, it seems that they do a complete redesign of the car from the ground up. Everything from the visuals to the physics to the sounds, everything seems to be very good. But interesting to see that they're continuing. Alright, Sage of Light, I gotcha. Pure Armageddon, will you upgrade your PC? Well, I want to be perfectly honest. I think we all want the latest and greatest, but I'm dealing with just money, to be honest. Not that computers are horrifically expensive anymore, but you know, I have better things to spend my money on for the moment. I know that sounds a little crass, but at the same time, you know, you've got to be smart about how you spend your money, and I think that I'm better served trying to invest in different things for the moment. This computer is punching well above its weight. It's if you want the technical specs on it, it's a Dell XPS 8300 from 2011, so it's getting on 6 years old, and it's really punching above its weight. I upgraded the graphics card a few months ago. It's an NVIDIA GTX 950, which is still rather outdated, but it beats the 560 that this thing originally came with. So it's an upgrade as far as I'm concerned, but it's well behind the curve, and I know it's behind the curve. And yes, it is somewhat limiting in terms of what I can do with the videos, in terms of numbers of cars on track and things like that, because you'll notice on the latest video that I released of the Formula Hybrid and some later cars running around, earlier cars rather, running around at Barcelona, you'll notice there are some frame losses, particularly from the trackside views in that. So yeah, that's one of the limitations that I have, and I'm really squeezing all the life out of it. But yeah, that's what I'm dealing with. I would love to be able to upgrade, but right now, I mean, it wouldn't be the most responsible decision in terms of thinking of the big picture of what I have to be paying for right now. Anyway, back to the cars. Mashed out a 119.3 on Mugello in the MP4-6. I have yet to drive the MP4-6 at Mugello, so interesting with that lap time. I don't really know how quick it is, because I've never done it, and I haven't seen too many other people do it, so I'm not really sure about what the lap times are there for that car. But I have to say it's a pretty good lap time. Sage of Light, I recommend building your next PC. Yeah, I have really considered that. The problem I have, though, is I'm not entirely sure where to look in terms of reliable spec sheets to see which motherboard is compatible with which processor, and then RAM and graphics and whatever. I could totally do it. I have the technical know-how to be able to do it. The computers really are not that complicated, but just getting all of the parts and making sure that they're going to work well together, that's my biggest problem. I like Intel. I'm running an Intel i7 in this right now, and that's still more or less the state of the art. They've redone some of the internals of that processor. I'm running the Sandy Bridge architecture. I think they've moved on to something else now, but processor-wise, I'm still pretty good. It's just all of the ancillary components. It's the board itself, it's the RAM, it's the hard disks. I'm still running conventional hard disk drives. I don't have SSDs in here yet, and then just a typical air-cooled everything with the graphics card, and 12 or 16 gigs of RAM. I think it's 12. Yes, 12 gigs of RAM, but that's what I'm doing. Pure Armageddon. Virtua, looks like they've abandoned their mods. What happened with Virtua, as far as I understand, was Ferrari lodged a complaint against them and said, don't model our cars. We didn't give you permission. It's infringement on our copyright and on our patents, and we're going to sue you. So they filed a cease and desist order with Virtua, and they basically had no option other than to take the mods down because they definitely don't have the resources to go into a legal battle with Ferrari. So that was it. As far as why they abandoned the MP413, probably it was the chilling effect of that cease and desist order from Ferrari because, well, what's to stop McLaren from doing the same? Granted, Virtua could probably build a better car than McLaren can anymore, but yeah, that's as far as I know about that situation. It is a big loss to Assetto Corsa, to be honest, because, well, the F300 was great. For its time, it had the best sounds in the game. It had great physics, but nowadays the sim has moved on quite a lot. But the tires are now behind the curve in terms of what they can do with the tire modeling. Assetto Corsa run the version 10 tires for quite some time now, I think since November. So yeah, the F300, I can still make it work if I go in and I change the sound settings in the actual coding of the game. So sometimes I'll release a video with the F300 in it. That's what I'm doing. I'm actually going in and deleting some files, backing them up first so I can get it back again, but I'm going in and deleting things to make the F300 work. But yeah, it is still available on some sites. It might even be up on Race Department still, I'm not sure, but it is there, but it won't work in Assetto Corsa as it currently is. You got to make sure to go in and change the settings yourself manually. Alright, will I be doing update videos for the ASR cars? I'm definitely going to review any new ones that they bring out. In terms of when they release incremental updates, I'll basically just do it on a case-by-case basis. I did the FW14 and the MP46. Those are two of my favorite cars, so I basically had no choice but to do them. But in terms of when they continue to bring updates to, like, the Ferrari 310, for example, I don't know if I'll do a video on that one because it's already at 0.2 beta, and what's 0.3 really going to do? They've already done a great job on that car, so I think any other improvements on it are going to be so incremental that we may well not really notice. But who knows? Let's see. Why the other Ferrari mods out there don't get into trouble? Well, I think it's probably a question of visibility, to be honest. I don't really know how Virtua were promoting themselves. I came into Assetto Corsa when they were already well established, so I didn't really see them from the beginning. But I tend to think that maybe Ferrari just happened to see them, and they haven't necessarily seen anybody else. Because there are obviously other Ferrari F1 mods out there, and, well, they're still out there right now, and they're still supported. ASR obviously doing a few of them. VRC have done the F2007, and Kozdar, he was the developer behind the F2002. F2002 is not released under VRC, but Kozdar I now think is involved in VRC, so you could call the F2002 a VRC product maybe. But yeah, in terms of the X2010, I wanted to do a review of the X2010. The problem with it is I couldn't get the video to record properly. Whenever I'm in the car, the video judders a lot, and the frame rate on my side is fine. Actually, recording and driving, the frame rate's fine, but the playback, no matter what settings I played with, it was really juddery, and there were audio dropouts and things like that, and it would just be terrible to watch. So as cool as the X2010 is, and as interested as I am in it, I can't really do it. Simply because of the limitations in it. I don't really think it's my system this time. I think it actually is a problem on the mod side because obviously I do the same thing with other cars and I have no problem. So something is up with the X2010 in terms of that. Am I going to be doing podcasts after every F1 race rather? Yes, I am going to be doing that. At least that's the plan. They may be released a day or two after the fact, simply because of the time of day in terms of when everything happens from my end, simply because, well, it's the middle of the night for the Australian Grand Prix, and for me to do something immediately following it, I'll literally be up all night long, and then most of the rest of the day. So probably you could expect something the Monday or Tuesday after the Australian Grand Prix, for example. But for the races that are happening early in the morning my time, like 6 or 7 a.m., then I could probably get something out the day of. Let's see. Pure Armageddon. The stock Ferraris in Assetto Corsa, very easy to drive. But I like much more to drive the F2002 and F2004 mods. Yes, the stock Ferraris are very easy to drive, and I think some of that is due to Ferrari trying to save face a little bit. They don't like it when their products are not well represented. And even if they're accurately represented, they don't appreciate it when the performance isn't there. And this goes all the way back to the early 1990s with Alain Prost when he was driving for the team. He criticized the car, and then they fired him at the end of the season, and that's how Alain Prost ended up taking his sabbatical for 1992. So that's a long-standing precedent with Ferrari. So I think they probably told Kunos, up the performance a little bit, make them a little bit easier to drive, simply because we want to look good. The mods for the Ferraris, the F2002 and F2004, they're very good in terms of realism, in terms of how I would say the cars probably feel. I'd say the F2002 feels better than the F2004. ASR, when they released the F2004, initially I was very complimentary of it because we really didn't have any reference point from which to judge it. But now that we have other Formula One cars in Assetto Corsa, and the F2002 is still supported and still updated occasionally, the F2004 from ASR needs some more work. In particular, the car bounces a lot. And that doesn't seem to be a tire problem. That seems to be a suspension geometry problem, an inertia problem, because no matter what I do with the settings, particularly in low-speed corners, the car bounces like crazy, and it just keeps the rear end from being planted, and it just keeps you from getting the power down. So no other Formula One car in Assetto Corsa does that. So I think that's probably a physics problem for ASR to deal with. Let's see. Thank you very much. You find the podcast entertaining. It's a new idea, and it's just something that I decided to do on a whim, and I'm just trying to see what's going on. Let's see. I'd like to have added you on Steam. Yeah. In terms of adding me on Steam and whatever, believe it or not, even though I make a lot of videos of video games, I don't actually play a lot. I know it sounds weird, but basically when I play, it's to gather material to put up onto YouTube. It's not something that I really do for fun in a traditional gaming sense. Yes, I do, but most of the time when I'm in something like Assetto Corsa or iRacing, I'm really out there just to try and find something that looks cool and looks good enough to go up on YouTube. See. Good to see commentary and streams. Yes, thank you very much. And again, Alex, you are not the first person to say that you like the review videos. I started to do the reviews a while back. The earliest one that's on the channel is actually from 2012. It was of an R-Factor mod. It was the DRM mod from R-Factor, and I reviewed the BMW from that mod, the BMW M1, and reception to that was better than pretty much anything I had gotten so far. And to be honest, the inspiration for the idea comes from Martin Brundle, because in the 90s he did a lot of it, but he still does a lot of it today as well. He does his talk and drive broadcasts where he drives a car and he describes to you what the driver has to do, what the car's feeling like, things that the driver has to monitor, what he's hearing from the pits, etc. But yes, that's where the idea for the reviews comes from. It's sort of a blend of an automotive journalism, like a car and driver or road and track sort of thing, blended with Martin Brundle driving and talking. So that's where I got the idea from, and I'm glad to see that a lot of people like it. talking about Nürburgring lap times in the Formula Hybrid. I have not driven that car on the Nordschleife yet, and I'm not even sure if I will. I don't do Nordschleife videos for a couple of reasons, mostly because it's such a long track that if you screw up, you have to start all over again. And there are 80-something corners, and it's 14 miles long, and a lap time in an absolutely ridiculously fast car takes 5 minutes. So you're talking about, at least, if everything goes perfectly, you're talking at least 10, 12 minutes of time where you have to be 100% on it, no mistakes, and if you want a video to look good, you want to do everything great. But the other reason why I don't do a lot of Nordschleife videos is because it doesn't fit most of the cars that I like to drive. I like open wheelers, obviously Formula cars, and they're not at home on a circuit like that. It's way too bumpy. The corners are way too tight. The curbs are mostly not suited for them. So I try to do things that are more representative of what the car actually does, and doing that in an environment where we're used to seeing them. The Nordschleife, as cool a track as it is, it's just not good for most of the kinds of cars that I like to bring to you guys. Reviews are always the ones I'm looking forward to, providing us with a lot of information about the car in real life. Yeah, I like history, to be honest. I studied political science in university, and a big component of that is history, and motorsports has a great history, and I think if you have a good understanding of the history of motorsports, you get more of an appreciation for a given car, a given team, a given driver in a given era, and it just helps to build the context through which to understand something like that, simply because it's great to appreciate a car or to appreciate a track at face value for what it is, but I also like being able to go back in time a little bit and give you more of a contextual reference of why this thing is so cool. Mazda 787 officially coming to Assetto Corsa. Yes, absolutely want to see that. I don't know when Kunos are going to release that. I would expect to see it sometime later this year, maybe by early summertime, so May or June. But again, that's just pure speculation from me. I don't know anything about what Kunos are doing with the 787B. But we've had modded versions in the past. I don't think they work anymore with the latest updates. But yeah, definitely very excited to see the 787B coming to Assetto Corsa. And honestly, it'll be very nicely paired with the Porsches that we got at the end of last year, the 962 and even the 917, because Le Mans cars, we need an official version of Le Mans, to be honest, because there's a very good mod version of Le Mans for Assetto Corsa, but I would really like it if Kunos would go out there this June and laser scan that track between one of the practice sessions, because we need that in this sim big time. F1 lacks a platform to watch classic seasons. Yes, it does. The biggest reason why people pirate stuff and why people stream stuff illegally is because they want to see that classic content. They want to relive all of those great moments. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Spa 1998 when Damon Hill and Ralf Schumacher finished first and second for Jordan after Schumacher crashed into Coulthard. That sort of thing is what people remember, and just like fans of any other sport, you like to go back sometimes and see how things used to be. Liberty Media, hopefully with their takeover of Formula One management, they understand that, and as an American company, hopefully they will understand that, because you can go out and buy boxed sets of Super Bowl coverage. Super Bowl, if anybody doesn't know, it's the final game of the American football season, and people will buy things like that like crazy. So I hope Liberty understand that sort of dynamic as well, and they start to offer us content like that, because I'll buy it, and I'm sure everybody else here will buy it as well, because right now, if you want to find classic F1 content, you need basically to be a little surreptitious and a little sly, because there's no legal way to get it, and it's really a shame, and it's particularly a shame when websites get shut down because of it, and even if private citizens get shut down and even face charges because of that. I don't know of any specific cases where a private citizen actually had to deal with prosecution because they were either streaming or downloading whatever classic F1 content, but that's something Liberty needs to deal with. And again, I will totally buy up box sets of every Formula One season ever, and you could put me in a lifetime subscription to get the next season at the end of the year, every year, so I would do it. Do you believe the mid-'80s to early '90s are the most exciting years of F1? Yes. Yes, I do. Beginning really in 1983, when Brabham came in with the BT52, that BMW four-cylinder engine made it to the turbos. Yeah, that is when the innovation in F1 really started to take off. Started in '81 with McLaren bringing carbon composites into the sport, and then the engine technology just really took off. Turbos were the biggest innovation in F1, I believe, up until that point, to be honest, because the sport went through an incremental and logical evolution, starting in the pre-war Grand Prix days to 1950 with the official start of the World Championship as we know it, and the cars changed gradually, and it made sense. We went from the engines mounted in front and the driver sitting at the back to the engine in the middle and the driver starting to sit lower and lower in the car. And then, of course, aerodynamics started to come in. But when the 80s happened, you had an explosion of innovation with materials. You started to have computers aiding in designing these cars. Carbon fiber, turbos. All of that combined to turn the 1980s into the most explosive, literally and figuratively, time we've ever seen in Formula One. And yeah, definitely love the 80s. The 90s were the logical progression to the 80s, to be honest. I think banning turbos, restricting them for 1988, and then banning them altogether in 1989, I think that was also a logical step, simply because the power output started to get beyond the structural capabilities of the cars. When you hear about the Lotus 98T putting out 1,500 horsepower in qualifying trim, that's true. But when you look at the rigidity of something like the Lotus 98T, you start to realize that if that engine fails in qualifying trim like that, it's a bomb going off in that car. And I think the risk of having something bad happen basically overrode the all-out speed. Also, the cars just weren't quick enough from an aerodynamic standpoint back then really to take advantage of all that power. They were ridiculously fast in a straight line, but in the corners, the cornering speeds were nowhere near what they are today. If that sort of power output came back today, I think it would be better, because we now have the cars that have the ability to deal with high power outputs from a strength perspective and as well as an aerodynamics cornering speed perspective. So yeah, I definitely think maybe now is the time to start reintroducing things like that. You believe a return to the V12, V10, or V8 is possible? Jean Todt denies it. Ross Brawn is considering it. I don't know where the political will is to do that, to be perfectly honest with you. The fans, by and large, want the screamers back. Everybody wants those screaming engines, and that's what Formula One really was known for. 1989, we started to see V10s in Formula One, and that they really started the whole idea of that high-pitched wail that basically became synonymous with Formula One. When I started watching, the first thing that I noticed about the cars was not how they looked, because they looked similar enough to Indy cars. I was familiar with them, obviously seeing that on TV since I was little, but the sounds of those engines was something else. And I was an 11-year-old kid. I didn't know much about cars at the time, and I was just wondering, what are these engines? Are they turbines? Because the most similar sound I had ever heard before was from a jet. So, and that started the whole thing of trying to find out about the sport and learn about the science and engineering and culture around it. But yeah, I think the fans want the V10s or V8s back. Jean Todt definitely doesn't want them. Ross Brawn might want them. He certainly knows what he's doing, but at the same time, it's not Ross Brawn who's officially running the show. Ross Brawn is he's basically the technical director of Formula One, and that's a very important role, but he's not he's not the king of Formula One, for better or for worse. And there's a lot of politics, of course, involved in this sport, and appeasing the FIA is agenda item number one for Formula One right now, especially under new management. Because with Liberty taking this over, they need to prove not only to the FIA, but they also need to prove to the European Union, who apparently have some very interesting perspectives on business, they need to prove to the EU that they're serious about this and that they're not going to be reckless. So for the foreseeable future, I think returning to the V8 or maybe even the V10, it's an air castle. It's pie in the sky. It's not something that we're going to see. But for the future, if there's a way to make a V8 or a V10 look environmentally friendly, and I really hate the whole environmentalist agenda, to be perfectly honest with you, because that's not what racing is. It is racing is about technology, yes, but it's also about speed, and it's about driver skill, and ultimately the name of the game is to put on a good show for the people watching on television. It's not even as important to cater to the people who actually go to the races. At least listening to what Bernie used to say, he didn't care as much about the actual venue spectators as much as he did about the TV rights. And understandable, I think over 1 billion people watch Formula One throughout the course of a year. So it's probably the most televised single sporting enterprise on the planet. So it's understandable that he'd be concerned about the TV rights, but it's politics. It's all very dirty politics. And if the fans had their way, the V12s never would have gone away. But we don't have our way. With new ownership, who knows? I'm more optimistic than I have been in the past, but who knows? Engine choices, given the choice of a straight 6 turbo or a V10. Yeah, I like the idea of engine choice. We used to see engine choice in Formula One. Again, I'll go back to the 80s. 1988 was the last year for the turbos. The turbos were heavily restricted that year, so a lot of teams decided to go to naturally aspirated engines simply because, well, they're going to be phased out, the turbos anyway, so let's go and start early. Williams did it. They ran Judd V8s in 1988. Other teams ran V8s, and then other teams like McLaren kept the turbos, and that was a trend that continued all the way up to 1996, I believe, with the entire grid not running the same type of engine. They, trying to think here, 1990, 1991, you had V8s, V10s, and V12s up and down the grid. Obviously, Ferrari and McLaren in 91 were running V12s, Williams were running V10s, Benetton were running V8s, so you definitely see the diversity in engine choice there. And not only that, but gearbox technology back then. Williams were running the semi-auto, McLaren were running the H-pattern manual, Ferrari running the semi-auto, so a whole lot of diversity technically, and that's something I think that we also need to see, simply because Formula One, it's a very interesting sport, but at the same time, there is a lot of continuity up and down the grid, which is good for retention in terms of keeping teams in the sport and making resources a little bit more accessible, but at the same time, I do like to see some variability there. Let's see. Yeah, V6 hybrids were introduced to connect more to road tech and to get more manufacturers in the sport. Honda joined. They're not looking to be stable right now in the long term. Let's see. There was this whole notion of making the V6 hybrids more road relevant, from what I remember thinking back to 2013 when these regulations were being talked about. Yes, there are a lot of hybrid road cars now, but I don't know of any hybrid road car that has a V6 engine, a turbo, and 900 horsepower. So is it road relevant? I don't think so. There's relevance in other areas in terms of the MGUs, the batteries. There's a lot of application for electric cars in those kinds of cases. Tesla, for example, a big manufacturer of electric cars, probably the most well-known, they have very, very cool battery units, and I have to believe that they're sharing some information from people involved in Formula One, because the real problem with electric cars is not performance, it's not accessibility, it's not amenities, it's not even really practicality, it's just the batteries. That's really the problem. The batteries are big, the batteries are heavy, but at the same time, they take a long time to charge, and that's the biggest problem. I don't know the specifics, but I think the latest Tesla, from a completely flat battery to 100% ready to go max range, I think the recharge time is about 18 hours. Now, everybody who lives in the real world and lives a real life, you can't drive your car every other day. You have to be able to just get into your car and drive and know that it's going to be there for you. Electricity can do that. It's not a necessity to have an internal combustion engine powering your car. There are other ways to get that motive power. But electricity drawing its energy from battery banks that need to be recharged overnight, no, that's not the way to do it now. If Tesla or any other manufacturer for that matter could get battery technology to a point where you could get, let's say, 80% of a full charge in 5 minutes, about the same amount of time that it takes you to refuel a conventional car running on gasoline or diesel, then the technology is 100% viable and it's ready for mass production. The way Formula One works with the turbos and the MGU-K and MGU-H, they're getting there. They are obviously discharging and recharging those batteries very quickly, multiple times around a single lap, and the power delivery is instant and apparently pretty consistent. And certainly the mods that we're seeing in sim racing, and even some official content over from iRacing, the MP430, the way that you interact with the battery, it's very intuitive. But the problem is that battery and those motor generator units are not primarily responsible for moving the car. The cars could run exclusively on that power if they wanted to, but they wouldn't go very fast and they wouldn't get very far. So that's the problem, the charge and discharge rates on the batteries and the overall capacity. Let's see. Yeah, 18 hours to recharge the Tesla. At least that's what I've heard. I don't know if that's accurate anymore, but I have heard that number and I still think it applies. Let's see. Yeah, have they doomed Alonso's career? Yes. They have absolutely doomed Alonso's career. And is McLaren doomed this season? Yes, they are. Alonso, if he were smart, and he is a smart guy, don't get me wrong, but he makes the most diabolical career choices. He left Renault on the back of winning 2 world championships. Now, you could argue whether or not that was a good decision. We know where Renault were in 2007. They were clearly behind Ferrari and McLaren, but they also didn't have the best drivers. Fisichella, he was all right. He certainly was all right. He has 3 Grand Prix wins to his credit, and he could go really fast on his day, but he wasn't consistent enough, and Kovalainen was a rookie. Alonso went to McLaren, and he started to win. And that was great. But he screwed himself at McLaren the first time because he had a completely childish response to Lewis Hamilton coming into the team. And sure, you can argue, all right, Alonso is a double world champion, and at the time, the reigning world champion. Hamilton was a rookie. But at the same time, Alonso, you are the world champion. We know how good you are. And you have the number 1 on your car. So I think Alonso's response to Hamilton coming into McLaren sealed his fate there all the way back in 2007. He went back to Renault and managed to win 2 races in 2008, which was another incredible bit of driving from him, and it shows you just how good he is. But then he decided to go to Ferrari right when they were starting to go into their downturn. Ferrari probably should have won the 2010 championship, all things considered. I think Red Bull got very lucky in many regards. But at the same time, where Alonso needed to perform, he simply couldn't. Abu Dhabi 2010, he was stuck behind Vitaly Petrov for the entire race. And I remember on the cool-down lap after the checkered flag, he gave Petrov the finger and then almost rammed into him because he was so upset. So, and then Alonso just did a few more completely worthless seasons at Ferrari, and I don't think most of that was his fault. I think that was Alonso. That was Ferrari's fault, rather. But, and then he goes to McLaren. I don't understand his rationale for making the team decisions that he does. Honestly, sticking out at Ferrari would have been a better option. But, again, nobody has 20/20 foresight. We only have that in hindsight. So his career could well be doomed at this point because he's also getting older. And, well, he's a double world champion and a good driver, but he's not the young guy on the block anymore, and there's new talent always trying to get into Formula One. People criticize Kimi Räikkönen for that sometimes. They say, well, he's a little bit too old, and he hasn't won a race since 2013, so why is he still there, and why is he taking up space at Ferrari? But, you know, the teams are going to offer a drive to whoever they think is the best person to be in that seat, and Kimi Räikkönen apparently still makes Ferrari happy, so he's there. Same deal with Alonso at McLaren for the moment, even if Alonso is not too happy there. Let's see. I did see that McLaren informally had some talks. I don't know if those talks were actually with Mercedes or if they were just talking about Mercedes, but I have seen that. I don't think it's going to happen. And Martin Brundle has actually gone out and said that it's not going to happen. I tend to believe what Martin Brundle says, particularly as a former McLaren driver, but Honda have a contract with McLaren. And in days gone by, I would say that, sure, there's a possibility that McLaren could buy Honda out of that contract, but look at where McLaren have been in the last 3 years. Look at their car. Look at their team name. They don't have a title sponsor. They don't have very many sponsors on that car. So McLaren are definitely running into some financial problems. And with that Honda contract, I don't think they can get out of it, to be perfectly honest. Unless Honda, on their own accord, decides to withdraw, there's no way McLaren are getting rid of these Honda engines, at least not for this season. It's going to be another absolutely abysmal year. It's really a shame because this is McLaren International, and I talked about this in the podcast, but just how proud of a team with so much history in this sport. They had Prost, Senna, Häkkinen, Hamilton, and now they're running 16th and 17th in testing, and there's absolutely no way for them to pull out of it because that Honda engine is 3 years behind in development, and Honda have been in Formula One now for 3 years. So essentially they've made no progress. I don't have any words. Absolutely no words. What engines do McLaren use in their road cars? McLaren build their own engines for the road cars, and they're great engines. They're the MP412C and the P1 both ran a V8 of McLaren design, turbocharged, and the P1 also had a KERS system. I don't think the MP412C did, but they're running the same engine, just the differential between them is the KERS on the P1. But McLaren are producing their own engines for the road cars. Let's see, is Ferrari better than Mercedes? Hard to say right now. It's always difficult to look at testing and figure out what's going on, simply because, well, it's testing, and people sandbag, and people try new things. Sometimes people run parts that aren't even legal, just to try things out for the future. But Ferrari were consistently fast, and they were on top. They were the fastest on aggregate over the 2 weeks. So maybe Ferrari are faster than Mercedes. They are, at least in terms of what the lap times say. But I'm not convinced we've seen the total level of performance from Mercedes yet either, so we'll have to wait and see. Did I see the new Force India livery? What, that pink thing? Yeah, I saw it. Let's see. McLaren have been on a downward slide in F1 ever since they started their road car division with the MP412C. Yep. 100% agree with you. MRacer001. Definitely agree with you there. Ferrari were able to be successful in racing and in road cars simply because Ferrari was founded as a road car company. Enzo Ferrari, he started racing simply so he could finance the road cars. He wanted to build road cars, so that's what he did, and racing was a way for him to pay for it because he wasn't selling very many cars because he had to ask a lot of money for them. But racing gave him the money, and obviously it turned Ferrari into what it is today. Yes, the McLaren F1 did use a BMW engine. That was BMW V12, I believe 6.5 liters. Don't quote me on that, but yes, normally aspirated BMW V12. which sounded absolutely great, by the way. And their Le Mans car from 1999, the LMR, pretty much the same engine as was in the McLaren F1. So really cool. Yeah, McLaren in 93 and 94, those were the Peugeot engines, and they were pretty bad. Absolutely bad. Hakkinen and Brundle, nope, no way. Do you believe Verstappen or Ricciardo could be a world champion? Yes, either one of them could very well become world champion in the future. I don't think it's happening this year, but yeah, definitely. They are both supremely talented drivers, and in the right car, they will both be unbeatable if given the opportunity. I think Verstappen, he's still very young, and obviously Ricciardo's a bit older. There's a maturity factor there, but I don't know if I've seen anybody with as much raw talent behind the wheel of a racing car as Max Verstappen, to be honest with you. And I'm counting Senna in that mix, to be totally blunt. Verstappen reminds me so much of Senna, it's scary in terms of how he drives that car. Particularly in Brazil last year, he was just... I don't know how he made that save. I do not know how he made that save coming down the last... the final corner leading onto the start-finish straight. But then also he was just trying to... he was trying different lines, and he just knew where the grip was before he turned into the corner. Everybody else was sliding, and he held it. So, he is probably in the top 3 most talented people ever to get into a Formula 1 car, just on raw talent. And yes, we have a Dutchman watching, Sage of Light. Yes, I'm very happy to see Max in there. Not necessarily because he's Dutch, but he's just very, very good. He's just so good. And because, I don't know if it's because he's young or maybe it's just his demeanor. He's just very easygoing about it. He seems to be a very nice guy, a very accessible guy. I don't think the fame has gone to his head, and that's always very good to see. Jos was also very much that way. Again, it seems like somebody who you could talk to and not feel starstruck, if that makes any sense. And yeah, I have seen that video from Brazil 2015 in the Toro Rosso. Dry conditions, but the rear end just steps out through second to last corner there before you get onto the start-finish straight where it dives downhill to the left. I think the name of the corner is actually Mergulho, which means dive in Portuguese. But yeah, back end steps out, tons of opposite lock, and he just holds that slide for seconds. Absolutely great. Let's see. McLaren doesn't make the road car engines from scratch. I'll have to double check that. I know McLaren did design their own engine for the MP412C. So whether or not it was based on another design, possible. I don't know that specifically. Where did Ferrari stand in testing last year? I don't entirely remember, to be perfectly honest. Hi, Daniel. Let's see. Yeah. Hamilton used to be like Verstappen is now. Very humble. Yes, I agree with you, Arrow. Hamilton, when he came into F1, again, he was 22 years old, I think. And he definitely was... He gave the impression that he was this kid in a candy store. And who could blame him? You're a young kid, actually younger than I am. And he's driving a Formula 1 car and scoring podiums and taking wins. That is like the dream of every kid out there. Absolutely great. Hi there. But just I don't know where his head went after 2008, to be perfectly honest. 2007 he had a great year, lost out on the championship out of his own fault, throwing it off the road in China. And then 2008, he had a difficult road to it, but he did win that championship. Thank you, Timo Glock. But after 2008, McLaren went into a slump in 2009. They came back. They were able to challenge for wins by the end of the year. But in 2010, he just... I think the fame went to his head, to be honest. He started to hang out with a whole bunch of Hollywood people, and fine. That's fine. I'm in no position to tell any human being what to do with their lives. But at the same time, I think Hamilton had a little trouble balancing his responsibilities to McLaren with his personal life. And I think he had an ugly falling out with Nicole Scherzinger, who he was dating at the time. So of course that affects you. We've all been there. We've all been through breakups and things like that. But when you're on that sort of an international stage with the pressure to perform, that's got to mess with your head a lot. So I think there was some personal upheaval in Hamilton's life, but also I think the fame got to him. I think he has mellowed out a bit. I think he's a little bit less pretentious than he used to be, but at the same time, he is very much his own man. He has "Still I Rise" tattooed on his back, and it's that personal motto of "I'm unbeatable, and anything I do is always going to turn out right." Whether it's easy or hard, that's how it's going to work in his mind. And I think his career basically speaks to that. And love him or hate him, Lewis Hamilton is one of the best drivers we've ever seen in this sport, and he's definitely in the top two right now. Obviously, Vettel has more championships, but Hamilton, 3 times world champion, those two guys combined, well, that's 7. So, yeah. Hamilton was very egotistical for a while. He's matured, like him as a person again. Yep, I agree. People grow. People definitely grow. Let's see. Any idea on the RSS Formula Hybrid being released officially? At this time, there are no plans to release the Formula Hybrid in Assetto Corsa. It's a private project from RaceSim Studio, and it is payware. They were only charging €4 for it, but it is payware, and it's not licensed at all by Kunos, and I don't think there are any plans to release it as official Assetto Corsa content. Who do you think is the best driver that ever lived? Everybody asks this question, and many people, both little guys like myself, or guys like Martin Brundle again, or any other F1 journalist, even F1 drivers, they get asked this question. To the best driver who ever lived, if we're talking about Formula 1, it has to be Ayrton Senna. Absolutely has to be. There's nobody else who we talk about as much, for all kinds of reasons. Senna was famous not just for what he did in the car, where he was absolutely wonderful, but he was also very well known for what he did outside of the car. He had this sort of persona that was so charismatic. He was very articulate, very intelligent. Had he lived, it would be very interesting to see what he would have gotten up to be honest. I think he would have stayed in Formula 1 for a few more years. He would have won the World Championship in 1994. But beyond that, it's a little bit difficult to speculate. I think he probably would have continued at Williams after 94, building that team up. 95 and 96, and maybe even 97 could have been his. Beyond 97, I think it's a little bit difficult to wonder where he might have gone. We know he was talking to Ferrari shortly before he died, but I don't see him going to Ferrari and doing what Schumacher did. Senna wanted to win, and Williams were still the team with which to win. They had trouble at the start of 94, but Damon Hill was fighting for that world championship all the way to the last round, and had he not been run into by Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill would have won the 1994 World Championship in a Williams. So Senna, had he been in that car through all of 1994, he would have won that World Championship, hands down, because that would have been Senna running into Schumacher, to be perfectly honest. So that's how that would have happened, and then 95, 96, and probably 97 as well would have gone to Ayrton Senna. Yep, and there's that quote, "If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver." That's it, and that's why we love Senna. And it's not just for Senna the racing driver, it's Senna the human. Like I said, he was very charismatic, a very smart, very articulate guy. After Formula 1, I wonder what he would have done. I really do. I don't think he would have stayed in motorsport. I think he would have gone back to Brazil, and he either would have put more time into the charity that he was running for children, or maybe he would have become involved in politics in Brazil, and I could have seen Ayrton Senna president of Brazil. It's possible. Very possible. Fangio, it's really difficult to talk about drivers from that era simply because it was so different. There's virtually no carryover from Fangio's time to our own, or even the 70s, to be honest. The cars were just so very different even by that time. So it's difficult to talk about how somebody like Fangio would have done in this era, or at Senna's time, or Schumacher's time, whatever. But Fangio, I think, was probably a very similar sort of guy to Senna, because I remember hearing, I was watching a video of an old, a vintage revival race from Britain in the late 80s or very early 90s. I think Fangio died in 1995, so it couldn't have been any later than that, obviously, but somebody asked him if he would demonstrate the Mercedes W154 Grand Prix car. And supposedly Fangio's answer was, "No, I won't demonstrate it, but I will race it." So this is Fangio at this time, well in his pensioner years and still wanting to race something, So Fangio undoubtedly had to have had that same sort of mentality. Yes, with Senna, did Senna know something was wrong on that morning at Imola? Maybe. It's hard to say. There's footage of him walking around in the garage, sitting in the car with his helmet off, which was something that he never did. He was undoubtedly thinking about Roland Ratzenberger, Rubens Barrichello, who also had a big accident earlier in the weekend. So there was a lot on his mind, for sure. And Senna, the kind of brain that he must have had, he had this ability to be in multiple places at once mentally. So clearly he was thinking about the race. He was thinking about where he stood in the championship with no points on the board after two races, Brazil and the Pacific Grand Prix over in Japan. So he had a big mountain to climb, and undoubtedly he was thinking about all of that. We also know that he wasn't happy with the car, and that's the reason for some of the modifications, namely to the steering column. But it certainly was odd to see him before that race. He was just acting very strangely. It makes you wonder what he was thinking about and maybe what he knew. I've even considered the possibility: did Senna commit suicide? He had a very high-strung mentality. There's no question about it. I don't think he was a sad person by any means. There's obviously no reason for him to have felt any guilt over what happened to Ratzenberger or Barrichello. And just the way that car went off, almost inexplicably, it's a question that has come into my mind. I don't think he committed suicide. Don't get me wrong, but it's such a complex and confounding narrative. The way that we lost Senna, we've never really seen anything like it before or since. Let's see. How Grand Prix racing started pre-war. Being a racing driver, it wasn't a profession. You had to be brave and crazy. Yeah. That's how it started. Really, really did. And also what's really cool about motor racing, both back then and today, it's just people coming together across national lines, across political lines, to share in that passion and to compete on the same stage. That's really what the allure is. And then the car companies love it, the engineers love it, sponsors nowadays love it. It's a great forum. It's a great way to present a product, and it's a great product in and of itself. Let's see. The Prost team. Prost were, I believe they started with Peugeot engines, but I think by the end they were running rebadged Ferrari engines. They were badged as Acer in 2001. I remember that. Out of curiosity, is there an AC or R Factor 2 mod for the Ferrari F1 2000? Yes. There is an AC mod of the F1 2000. It's in the works right now. It's not released, but MSF, Italian Modding Team, that's the name of their group. They are working on an F1 2000. They're a very small group, and their work comes out on a very irregular and infrequent basis, but they are working on an F1 2000. Yeah, Quick Parker, we did talk about the rumor about McLaren going back to Mercedes engines. We don't know how true it is, first of all, but from my experience in Formula One, rumors do have some basis in truth, so we'll see what actually happens. But I said before, I don't think that McLaren have any way out of this contract for this year, because in earlier years, maybe McLaren could have afforded to buy Honda out of the contract, but not anymore. No sponsors on the car, no title sponsor. Revenue's got to be really down. And if they have trouble scoring points this year, they're not getting the TV money either. So we'll think about that. Generation of cars that I enjoy the most. Another tough question. I love turbo cars. I really, really love the turbo cars of the 80s. They fit my driving style well in Sims. So, like a lot of you comment on the onboard portions of my videos with my throttle. I blip the throttle a lot through medium and high speed corners. The 80s turbo cars are perfectly built for that. So I like the 80s cars a lot. I also like the 90s and early 2000s simply because they're quick, but you have to be very precise and very smooth. This latest generation of car, what we've seen in AC with the Formula Hybrid, loving that as well. It just has fistfuls of grip. There's so much grip. It's you can really push the thing for all it's worth, and it just keeps going and going and going. It's great. ACFL, they produced a B194. I haven't driven it simply because I saw some videos on YouTube of it, and it just looks bad. The sounds are all wrong. The modeling looks bad, and I'm not interested in it. If somebody else were to do a B194, though, yeah, I'd be very interested in that. And yes, I think it will have traction control. What kind of steering wheel and shifter do I use? I use an old Logitech G27, totally stock. It's about, I'd say it's about as old as my computer, so about 6 years old. We hear rumors of breakaway F1 series IndyCar Champ Car style. Last time I remember hearing a really substantiated rumor about this was in 2010. Right before the British Grand Prix and the Concord Agreement was yet to be signed. That actually, we're still governed under that Concord Agreement. I think it was Ferrari and a few other teams who basically signed to create the International Grand Prix Championship for the 2010 season. So that was the last time that we heard of a breakaway series. Nothing came of it, obviously. I think if there were a split in European motorsport, it would be the end of Formula One, to be honest, because wherever Ferrari goes is where the TV cameras are going to go, because Ferrari just has that brand recognition and that brand value. So if Ferrari don't want to be in Formula One anymore, Formula One's done. It's that simple, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's see. Yep. Arrow, you're talking about the B194. That's ACFL. They did the Renault RE30. I did a review of that. I think they did a great job on that car, but from what I've seen of the B194, they've completely missed the mark. Sage of Light, you're using the Thrustmaster wheel. I want a Thrustmaster wheel, to be honest. But you know what? My G27, as old as it is, it's still really solid and it's still working well. The only repair I've had to make to it wasn't even a repair. I just had to rebuild the pedals a few months ago. because the potentiometers on them, they just got gummed up with dust and stuff, and I just had to take the pedals apart and clean them out really good and then put them back together, and they're working fine. No problems. But the next wheel I get is definitely going to be a Thrustmaster. Yes, releasing the B194, not quite finished, alongside an 89 Williams. That would be the V10 car, the FW13, which, yeah, that'd be cool. They've released the FW11B, so the FW12... I need to do a little bit of research here. Would that car from Williams 1989, would that be the FW12 or the FW13? Because I know the FW13 was a V10 car, and 1989 would have necessarily been V12, so why does 12C ring a bell in my mind? I'm not sure. Williams FW13, I pull up on the iPhone. Yes, you're saying FW12. And FW12 was the car used in the 1988 season. And yes, I am right about the 12C, running in 1989 with that 3.5-liter Renault V10. Yep. Very cool. Let's see. Yep, I agree with you. We need Virtua's cars to be brought back. I think VRC had some discussions with whatever is left of Virtua, trying to take their mods and update them. I don't think they got permission, but somebody does want to do it. I have not played Project Cars, and I've not played it simply because I can tell just from the videos on YouTube that I have seen of it that the physics are nowhere near what I would want. Let's see. McLaren chassis is on par with the Williams. It might be. We'll never know, though, because Williams are running good engines. Which driver would you like to see win the Australian Grand Prix? Whoever crosses the line in first position on lap 58. Virtua is still there. Huh. Yes, Pure Armageddon, thank you for that. Again, I just looked... I've only seen Project Cars videos. I've never played it, I've never seen a demo, whatever, but just by looking at the steering wheel movements and then the reaction of the car, it's total arcade. Not interested. Sage of Light, proposition to return to active suspension. I saw that as well, but I'm not entirely sure of the applications of it. If we did active suspension, it's just, at this point, I think it's just another gimmick, to be honest. If you want the cars to follow closer nose to tail, okay, fine, but does that really help the sport? Does more overtaking really help Formula One, I guess, is the real question that we've all been asking ourselves since the 90s, really. But, it is what it is. I would like to see active suspension only because it's a technical innovation and it's something that we haven't touched since 1993, so I would like to see the teams get the opportunity to play in that area, but I don't know. I think active suspension would make overtaking harder, simply because when you have an active car, you have an active car because you want to minimize drag. So if you watch old videos of the Williams FW14B and the FW15C, what you'll see on the straights is that the ride height goes up, and what that does, it cuts drag because your diffuser is not generating as much negative pressure anymore. So the car's faster down the straight. But when the car goes into the corners, it sinks right back down again to seal that under tray as much as possible and generate more downforce. So the cars will be even quicker in the corners with active suspension and even quicker down the straights. We've lost a little bit of straight line speed this year due to the bigger wings, which honestly is great because it's helping to raise cornering speeds. But honestly, I don't think active suspension would have any impact on overtaking. I think it would be par for the course, provided that everybody used the active suspension in the same way. Yeah, if you could standardize the active suspension, maybe that would be something. Similar to how they already standardized the ECU. McLaren Electronic Systems, they manufacture the ECU for all the teams. They have done that since 2008. So it's possible. If not standardize the manufacturer of the active suspension, what they could do is standardize its operation. So have the same software loaded into all of the cars for managing that suspension system. Yes, it would be cool to have the 312 T4 mod in Assetto Corsa. Lelo, yes, definitely would like that. Process for downloading the ACFL cars. Yeah, what you do, it's just like you do for RaceSim Studio or ASR, really. What you do for ACFL, though, you create an account on their forum, and the whole page is in French, so hopefully you can understand French, but you create an account with their forum, and then you buy it through your account there, and I pay with PayPal. Very similar. Javier Sumayeta, yo, also in the US, how do you watch F1 races? I'm watching them on NBC Sports. We have terrestrial TV coverage of Formula One for most of the races anyway, which is very good. Yep, Sage of Light. Yep, that's how to do it. I can understand French, but yeah, I guess a browser translator would work as well. Skin mods for the two 2007 VRC cars. I haven't seen any. Then again, I haven't looked, so there could be. Russians. I haven't noticed anybody with any Russian-sounding names yet. Let's see. Yes, unfortunately, pure Armageddon. You're representing your country very nicely, though. Good on you. Ah, there is a skin pack for the 2007 cars. Very cool. I know that the Williams FW31 comes natively with, I think, all of the 2009 skins. They're not all perfect, but they're pretty close. But that's good. Official news regarding the future of AC. I haven't heard anything either. The last thing that I heard was that they were acquired by, 555 Studios? But Kunos are still running the show. They've just been put into a larger corporate structure for more funding, basically. I think AC will continue to be supported for a few years yet, and then whatever these guys put out next is just going to be the next logical step to this sim. I don't think we're going to see AC go away for any time. Let's see. What else have we got? Well, I've just found the analytics page on this. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Pretty much live stats of what's going on. 28 of you watching now to the rate of 7.5 messages per minute. Really cool. Really, really cool. Sage of Light, do you still work with miniature steam engines? Yep. Yes, I do. I have 3 model steam engines that I run them on a very irregular basis, but yeah, I have them. It's just a quirky little hobby that a lot of people don't know about, and because I like cars, I also like engines, and yeah, they're cool things. Let's see, do you prefer 1.2 or 1.3 of the MP44 from VRC? Honestly, I think the latest update is an improvement. It just looks very good. It looks very good. It drives very nicely. It's very believable. The sounds are great. Everything is cool. MRacer001. Yeah, I like trains for sure, but he was talking about miniature steam engines. They're stationary steam engines, but they're actually they're actual steam engines, just small ones. They actually boil water and do work with them. They're cool. How do you compare Assetto Corsa and iRacing in physics? iRacing has a more detailed physics model. No question about it. Also, though, iRacing is a whole lot less accessible from a casual standpoint. You've really got to be able to put in the time and figure out all of the cars in iRacing to make your setup work well. Because it's just... It's such a highly strung sim that you really need to pretend you're a racing driver, and you've got to get that setup right, because You'll notice that whenever I do post an iRacing video, particularly in open-wheeled cars, you'll see that the front wheels lock up right away, even at full speed. And that's because I still haven't gotten my head around the suspension geometries on a lot of them, and just the weight transfer unsettles everything atrociously. But that's that physics model working, and Assetto Corsa doesn't have that problem. It can have that problem if you make the setup worse, but everything from Assetto Corsa, even from mods and Kunos native content as well, it's all very accessible. Let's see, MacCorp MP44. Yeah, I've driven that one as well for a while. That was the only MP44 we had in Assetto Corsa, and yeah, I like that one as well. VRC has better sounds. MacCorp, I don't know if it's a better model. We can all have opinions on that, but I think VRC, it's just a much more complete package all around. MacCorp, they had a very good model, but their sounds weren't as good, and VRC's physics are certainly better, so I do prefer the VRC version. Yeah. Yes, we do need to ask Alain Prost about the physics there. Also, while we're at it, let's ask Gerhard Berger about the MP46. Automobilista, I don't have that one. I've been meaning to give it a try, to be perfectly honest, but yeah. We are seeing some good content. ASR released a couple of 90s F1 cars a couple of days ago, actually, for Automobilista, yeah. Not really your area, but BMW M6 GT3, why is it in so few race sims? I don't know, to be honest. I do like tin tops. I started with tin tops in sim racing all the way back in the 90s with Gran Turismo, but I think it's just a somewhat obscure car. There aren't so many racing series that use the M6 GT3, and those that do, they're just overshadowed by things like WEC, Formula 1, IndyCar, things like that. So I don't think there's as much demand for that car. Very, very cool. Yes. Definitely liking the level of engagement I'm getting on this, I have to say. This is just a test, like I said, but yeah, very happy to see all of you guys watching, and of course very happy to see all of your comments, and you're actually giving me something to talk about, which is good. I've been going for an hour and 18 minutes. I was only expecting this to be maybe a 2-minute test, but it's turned into a cool little conversation, so thank you guys. Definitely liking this. Let's see. Yep, Ferrari 888, 650S McLaren, Porsche 911. Yep. And again, these are all cars we've got in Assetto Corsa. Javier, yeah, definitely. I'm open to the idea of doing collaborative work with other YouTubers. I've heard of all of those guys, and I love their content. I've never really been contacted by anybody else from YouTube, though. But yeah, if they wanted to do some sort of collaborative live stream or live commentary or review, whatever, I would totally be open to doing something like that. Talk and Drive live stream. I played with that a few months ago, and the way that I have to make it work, again, restricted with the computer, I have to run the live stream in such low resolution that it's unwatchable. But yeah, I would love to do that. Unfortunately, I can't right now. What would you say your favorite car, favorite team, and favorite driver is? For me, 96 Ferrari. Team would be old McLaren Honda, and driver Damon Hill. Favorite team, favorite car, favorite driver. Oof. Let's see here. I have a feeling that maybe my favorite car could be up for re-election this year, because I've been so impressed by these 2017 cars so far. But As it stands right now, favorite F1 car of all time. You know, what I'm doing here is I'm looking behind me, and I have actually a pretty expansive model car collection in 1/18th scale. A lot of them are Formula One cars, and if they're all among my favorites, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought them. But I've got plenty of Ferraris here. Got some McLarens, some Red Bulls, some Jordans. Favorite Formula One car in terms of its racing record? It's got to be the Ferrari F2002. It's everything. Let's see. In terms of, here's the other part about that, because you can have a favorite car, but a different favorite for different reasons. The F2002 has the ultimate racing record for the most part. Not as good as the MP44, but close enough. In terms of cars that are just interesting design-wise, McLaren MP418. The car that never raced. Adrian Newey's first car for McLaren. Just, you know, it was so bad because it was so good. The problem with it kept overheating because of the packaging being so tight. But if you look at how the cars are designed now and the way they've been designed really since 2012, tight packaging. Adrian Newey was doing that in 2003. So the MP418, big time leap of engineering technology there. So I like that. Favorite driver, Senna, we said that. And favorite era, gotta be early 90s. See you, Pure Armageddon. And no, your English is absolutely fine. It's better than mine. Sage of Light, are you considering a career series? Yeah, I've thought about that. I'm just thinking of how to present it, only because I'm afraid it would start to get a little monotonous, because I've thought about doing it in a few different cars. The FW31, maybe the Formula Hybrid now, but how would I make it interesting? I'd have to somehow record all of the results and that sort of thing, and come up with a championship table at the end. But I don't know. It is something I've considered in the past, and it's still something that I might do. And no, the AI really isn't up to it. That's the other problem. The FW31, you can do it, but the Formula Hybrid so far, the race videos that I have posted, I've just obliterated them, and the AI is at 100%. Comparison video between the Dallara DW12 and an F1 car. I would love to do that. Problem is, I want to do that on Assetto Corsa, and there's no DW12 for Assetto Corsa as far as I'm aware. I think the closest I could get to an Indy car would probably be... Let's think about this. It would probably be to run the Williams FW14 with like no wing on it. That's probably the closest I could get performance-wise, and it still would be nowhere near representative. Yeah, modders, make a DW12, and not a crap DW12 either. Make one that's similar to the one that's in iRacing. When I do play iRacing, I do run the IndyCar Road Series, so I do like the DW12 a lot. URD had some sort of an IndyCar clone, but I haven't really looked at it. Project Cars. Again, it depends on where they go with their development. Project Cars 2, yeah, it looks impressive, but again, if you turn the steering wheel a little bit and the car turns 90 degrees at 190 miles an hour, nope, don't want it. Let's see. Will the new Ferrari be more competitive, but not as close to the Mercedes? Yep, I think that's probably what's going to happen. I'm very encouraged from the Ferrari form from testing, but... it's still too early to tell, and of course we can never really tell from testing. But I hope somebody is able to challenge Mercedes fairly in this championship, because it's been too long since we've had a fight between two teams for the title. Last time it happened really was 2008, Ferrari, McLaren, Massa, and Hamilton. So we need to have a fight for the championship again. It's not good enough just to have two drivers on the same team going for the world championship every year. Ferrari hopefully can bring the fight to Mercedes. Yeah, Project Cars 2 looks like a GT Forza wannabe. That's bad, because GT and Forza really aren't that great. So if you're not even good enough to compete with them, ugh. GT was really good for its time, but, you know. Let's see. Did I use a setup for that MP44 Highlands video? I think the only thing I did was raise the ride height just so it wouldn't bottom out over the bigger bumps. But that was it. Let's see. 148 scale models, 118 scale models. Yep, definitely like them. I've got, I've got probably 40 Formula One models, all in 118th scale. Lots of Ferraris. Let's see. Just out on display, I've got the F1 2000, F2001, F2002, F2004, F2005, 248, F2007, F2008, F60, F10, F2012, and I think that about covers all the Ferraris I've got. Yeah, I've got a bunch of McLarens, MP46, two versions actually, the MP46. Let's see. Got a couple Williams cars. I've got the FW14 and the FW14B. Got a Renault RE20. A couple Mercedes cars. I've got Schumacher's Belgian GP version from 2012. I've got the 2010 show car Schumacher. So yeah, I've got a few of them, and there are some more odds and ends in between. And yeah, as far as getting the Mini Champs models, you have to. You got to see them and you got to get them because they just disappear. It's amazing. And yes, Arrow, yep, that was on the latest VRC MP44. I have the Mattel version of the F2004, and I had to get it online. It's the Australian GP edition, so I think it was a limited production run of something like 3,000 units. But yeah, that's my version of the F2004. Do I race VR? I would like to do VR. Again, I'm dealing with my system capabilities, but I think VR is it's a completely new and really interesting area of development for sim racing, simply because, well, I mean, it's VR. You know, you turn your head and you see something different. You can start to have the G-forces affect you a little bit more, at least in terms of your vision. The only problem I see with VR is you can't see any of your actual controls. So there's that problem to work around. But I've never actually tried VR in a sim race situation. I would like to. Maybe when I eventually upgrade my computer equipment, I'll look into it. But I'm definitely waiting for the next generation of that technology to get a little bit better established before I decide to invest in it. Will Alonso retire before the end of the season? No. The only way Alonso is going to retire is if he doesn't get an offer from somewhere else. I can definitely guarantee that Alonso is putting out job applications elsewhere. Will he get an offer? That's the real question. I don't see Ferrari letting Vettel or Raikkonen go, at least not anytime soon, and I certainly don't see Mercedes telling Bottas to take a hike just after they spent all that money to get him on board and get him out of his Williams contract. MRacer001, my PC is actually pretty old. It's a Dell XPS 8300, running an Intel i7 with 12 gigs of RAM. But the graphics card, it's an NVIDIA GTX 950, so it's kind of old. But yeah. Alonso, will he go to IndyCar? Probably not IndyCar, but WEC maybe. And yeah, the computer spec, it's appalling, I know. It's amazing that it's able to punch above its weight like it can. In any event, though, it's been an hour and a half, and wow, I totally did not expect this to go that long, but it did. And again, it was just a test to see, but I think I've proven that at very least I can talk to you guys as something is happening in the real world. So do expect some sort of a live stream around practice time for the Australian Grand Prix, which is coming next weekend. So very, very cool to see the level of interaction and engagement that you guys have. So thank you very, very much. I will be back soon with some more Assetto Corsa and Formula One related content. So thank you very much for entertaining me in this little test session, and we will see you very, very soon. Thanks, guys.